I never imagined that the man I once trusted more than anyone would one day try to erase me from his life by force. People think betrayal comes quietly, an affair revealed in whispers, or a lie discovered in some hidden email. But mine came with headlights glaring in the dark, the smell of burnt rubber, and the violent push of a hand that should have held me safe. It was late. The road was nearly empty, just the occasional flash of another car passing in the opposite direction. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, but the asphalt still shone wet under the streetlights. I sat in the passenger seat of my husband's car, silent, my fingers twisted tightly in my lap. We had argued before, every marriage has arguments, but this was different. His eyes were cold, his jaw locked. He gripped the wheel as if it was the only thing keeping him from exploding. The fight had started at home over money, or at least that's what he said. He accused me of questioning his decisions, of doubting him, of being ungrateful. I knew better. I had been noticing things for months, withdrawals from our joint account, receipts for things I had never seen, late notices tucked behind other letters. When I asked, he brushed it off with a laugh, then a sneer, then finally with anger sharp enough to leave bruises on my heart. Tonight the mask had slipped completely. "You're worthless without me," he spat, eyes never leaving the road. His words cut deeper than the knife I sometimes wished I had the courage to raise against my fear. Worthless. Nothing. He had said those words before, but tonight there was something final in the way he said them. I stared out the window, forcing myself not to cry, because I had learned tears only fueled his contempt. The city lights grew sparse as we left the main streets. He was driving too fast, the car shuddering slightly each time we hit a bump. My stomach knotted. I wanted to tell him to slow down, but the words stuck in my throat. I could feel something building like thunder before a storm. Then it happened. He swerved suddenly to the shoulder, slammed the brakes, and before I could even ask what he was doing, his hand was on me. Rough, merciless, shoving me toward the door. I gasped, clutching at the handle, but the door had already swung open. The world spun, headlights, darkness, the violent rush of air, and then my body struck the pavement. Pain exploded through me. My side screamed, my knees scraped raw, my palms burned from trying to break the fall. I rolled, gravel biting into my skin, until I lay still, staring up at the indifferent sky. The sound of his engine roared in my ears as the car sped away, shrinking into the distance. He didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. For a moment I thought I might never rise again. My chest ached with every breath, and tears finally broke free, warm against the cold night air. But beneath the pain another feeling surged, rage. Not the frantic, useless kind, but a steady burning fire that spread through my veins and told me, this is the last time. I dragged myself to the side of the road, clutching my bruised ribs, and sat there until the dizziness faded. A truck passed, slowing just enough that the driver looked out, concerned, but I waved him on. I didn't want witnesses. Not yet. My humiliation was mine to hold in silence until I could turn it into something greater. The world thought I was broken that night. Maybe even he thought it. But as I sat there, under the dull glow of a lonely street lamp, I felt something shift inside me. He had thrown me out of a moving car, left me like garbage on the side of the road. But I was not garbage. I was still alive. And as long as I breathed, I would not crawl, I would rise. By the time I limped home, the bruises were already darkening, my clothes torn and dirty. I stood in the mirror, looking at the woman he had tried to destroy, and whispered to myself, this is not your end. This is his. That night could have been my grave. Instead, it became my beginning. Because by the next day, before the sun had even set, I had a plan. And that plan started with divorce papers he never thought I would have the courage to serve. The night he pushed me out of the car was not born from nothing. It was the climax of a betrayal that had been growing like a poison in my veins for months, maybe even years. The signs were all around me, scattered like broken glass, but I had trained myself not to step on them, not to look too closely. I thought if I ignored the sharp edges, I could still walk barefoot through my marriage. I was wrong. It started with whispers, phone calls he would take outside, murmuring with his back turned, the words sharp but muffled. When I asked who it was, he would snap. Work. Always work. He made me feel foolish for doubting, as if I were the paranoid wife with nothing better to do. I told myself that marriage meant trust, And trust meant silence. Then came the money. First it was small things. A check missing here, a withdrawal there. He said he was investing, that it was for us. Though the only thing I ever saw was him returning home later, smelling of cologne that wasn't his, wearing a grin that wasn't for me. Our savings, once carefully built, began to shrink without explanation. I asked him about it once and he laughed. "You wouldn't understand," he said. That laugh, cold and dismissive, cut me deeper than his words. But money wasn't the only crack. He began to change how he looked at me. Or maybe I finally began to see it. His gaze, once warm, grew heavy with disdain. When we went to dinner with friends, he made jokes at my expense, calling me forgetful, careless, implying I wasn't good enough. The laughter of others only encouraged him. I would sit there with a smile frozen on my lips, pretending it didn't sting, while inside I was shrinking smaller and smaller. The night that broke me was not the car ride, but weeks before at a family gathering. My parents had invited us over. The table was full, glasses clinking, laughter circling the room. And then my husband raised his glass and said, "To my wife, who brings nothing." The room erupted in nervous chuckles, but my parents joined in, nodding as if it were true. I sat there, smiling weakly, swallowing the humiliation like poison. He looked at me over the rim of his glass with that smirk I had come to know too well, a smirk that said, "I own you." That night, I cried in the bathroom while the house slept. But even in my tears, I promised myself I would remember the sting. I told myself I would not let this be the story of my life. Still, promises are easy in the dark. In the daylight, I went back to silence, to pretending. The humiliation deepened when I discovered his lies were not just personal, they were financial. He had been draining our accounts, signing documents in both our names, forging my signature. I stumbled upon it one evening when a letter arrived from the bank, stamped urgent. He snatched it from my hands too quickly, and I knew. The truth didn't come in confessions but in fragments. A receipt crumpled in his pocket, a message flashing briefly on his phone, a check with ink that didn't match my own. And yet I stayed. Why? Because I thought leaving meant losing. I thought it meant admitting I had wasted years of my life on a man who never valued me. I thought it meant I was weak. So I swallowed his insults, endured his disdain, and told myself I could still fix it. But betrayal does not shrink when you ignore it. It grows. And his betrayal grew into something monstrous. It wasn't enough for him to lie, cheat, and spend what wasn't his. He needed me small, voiceless, humiliated. He needed to prove to himself that he could break me completely. And that is what led to the night on the road. The cruel jokes, the secret calls, the stolen money, they had all been rehearsals. That push, that violent act of erasing me, was the final performance. Only he didn't know that I too had been rehearsing something, survival. Because from that night forward, I began gathering not just courage but proof. If he wanted me voiceless, he would soon learn how loud silence could become when it walked into a courtroom armed with evidence. After the night on the road, something inside me snapped back into place. I still bore the bruises, purple and dark against my skin, but they were nothing compared to the fire that burned in my chest. He wanted me broken. Instead, he made me sharper. The next morning, when I woke sore and stiff, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. For years, I had written grocery lists, reminders, recipes, ordinary things. That morning, the pen trembled as I wrote my first line of truth. October 12th. He shoved me from the car, left me on the road, drove away. The words steadied me. I wrote another October 5th. He joked at dinner that I bring nothing. Parents laughed. Then another. September 29th. Withdrawals from joint account. He said investment. No proof. Page after page, the silence of my marriage became entries on paper. It was as if I was finally pulling threads from a tangled knot, laying them flat one by one. But a notebook alone would not protect me. I needed more. I needed evidence that could not be dismissed as paranoia. I began quietly collecting. When bills arrived in the mail, I set aside duplicates, slipping them into a folder marked household. I copied the numbers, highlighted dates, drew arrows linking unexplained withdrawals to the same nights he claimed to be working late. When I washed his shirts, I searched pockets. Twice I found receipts, one from a jewelry store, though I had never received jewelry, and another from a hotel just outside the city. I flattened them carefully, slid them into plastic sleeves and labeled them. For her. I wrote in the margin. At first, guilt gnawed at me. Spouses are not supposed to investigate each other like criminals. But every cruel laugh, every bruising word reminded me. He had stopped being my partner long ago. If he was building my downfall, I would build my defense. The most dangerous step came when I opened his desk drawer. He trusted me not to touch it, but he underestimated how much courage humiliation can give a woman. Beneath stacks of old bills and crumpled notes, I found them letters. Folded neatly, some sealed, others half torn open. All addressed to the same name, Sophia. I read them under the dim light of the kitchen. His handwriting curled with arrogance. Soon she'll be gone. She's nothing. You'll have the house, the life, everything she can't hold. My hand shook so badly the paper rattled. I pressed them flat against the table until the trembling eased, then copied every word into my notebook. Each line was another stone I would stack against him. I knew he could twist my story, call me hysterical, claim I imagined it all. But he could not twist his own words. So I photographed the letters, saved them to a hidden drive, and returned the originals as though untouched. Every night after that, while he slept, I sat at the kitchen table turning humiliation into evidence. I created categories: lies, debts, betrayal, violence. Each tab in the binder thickened, each page another piece of armor. It was exhausting work, but it gave me something I had not felt in years: control. And then came the message that changed everything. Late one evening, as I sorted receipts, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened it without thinking. He promised me the house. Don't embarrass yourself by fighting. You've already lost. The name at the top stopped my breath. Sophia. She wasn't hidden anymore. She was bold enough to taunt me directly, to step into the ring before the fight had even begun. I copied the message into my notebook, wrote the date and time, and printed the screenshot. She thought she was writing my defeat. What she gave me was evidence stronger than anything else in my binder. Proof of conspiracy. I looked at the growing pile, at my trembling handwriting, at the bruises fading on my skin. For years I had lived in silence, too afraid to admit the truth. But now silence had turned into paper, and paper had turned into power. I closed the binder with a sharp snap. He had built his life on lies. I was building mine on proof. And soon that proof would speak louder than his voice ever had. The night Sophia's message lit up my phone, I sat at the kitchen table with my binder open. Pages spread like a map of betrayal. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the raw, searing clarity of it all. He had chosen her. He had promised her my home, my life, my dignity. And she was arrogant enough to send me a message announcing my defeat before the battle had even begun. I realized then, I couldn't carry this war alone. The evidence was growing, but evidence without allies was still fragile. He had money, lawyers, charm to fool those who didn't know him. I needed people who believed in me, who would steady me when my knees shook. So I called Claire. She opened her door before I even knocked. One look at my face and she pulled me inside. Vivian, what happened? I laid the binder on her kitchen table, the pages spilling open. For a long time she said nothing, only turned each page slowly, her jaw tightening. Receipts, bank slips, Sophia's message, letters in his handwriting. When she finally looked up, her eyes burned. This isn't just betrayal. This is cruelty dressed as marriage. And you are not going to fight this alone. Tears pricked my eyes. He's going to take everything, Claire. He has lawyers. He has control. Then we find better lawyers, she said firmly. Ones who don't scare when men like him pound the table. I know someone. The next day, Claire drove me downtown. My binder sat heavy in my lap, my fingers pressed against its cover like a lifeline. We entered an office lined with shelves of law books, the scent of leather and coffee filling the air. That's when I met Evelyn. She rose from behind her desk, tall, composed, a navy suit pressed sharp, eyes sharp but not unkind. She shook my hand firmly, then gestured to the chair across from her. Claire told me you have something to show me. I opened the binder with trembling hands. Letters first, then receipts, then Sophia's text. Page after page slid across her desk. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush me. She read, eyebrows narrowing slightly, lips tightening. When I finished, silence hung heavy between us. My heart hammered. Was it not enough? Was I still nothing even with proof? Finally, Evelyn leaned back. Vivian, this isn't paranoia. This is a case. Fraud. Abuse. Conspiracy. He's left a trail so wide even the best lawyer couldn't cover it. Relief washed over me, but it came tangled with fear. What do I do? Evelyn folded her hands. You keep gathering. Every insult, every unexplained absence, every conversation. Don't just remember, document. Turn his cruelty into paper. Build a record he cannot burn. Her words lodged deep. The record. That was what I had been building even before I had a name for it. That night at Claire's, we turned her dining table into a war room. Papers stretched across the wood, coffee mugs cooling beside us, sticky notes marking timelines. Evelyn showed me how to organize by color. Red for lies, blue for debts, yellow for humiliation, black for threats. Claire brewed tea, her hand brushing my shoulder each time my doubt returned. I watched my life transform from scattered pain into order, into structure, into something that looked like power. When we finally closed the binders, Evelyn tapped the cover. This isn't just evidence. This is your shield and your sword. But Vivian, understand this, he won't stay quiet when he learns you have it. Men like him never do. Her warning hung in the air. And it proved true faster than I expected. Because just as I slid the last binder into Claire's cabinet, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Sophia. It was Michael. Subject: You can't win. Michael's email glared at me from the screen. Just 4 words. You can't win. I stared at them until the letters blurred. Once those words would have cut deep. For years his voice had been the authority I obeyed, the thunder that silenced me. But now the phrase sparked something else. Anger sharpened into resolve. If he wanted to fight, I would not enter his arena unarmed. I had truth. I had proof. And with Evelyn's guidance, I would shape that truth into a weapon. Claire cleared her dining table that weekend, transforming it into a command center. Stacks of paper stretched across the surface, notebooks and folders arranged in neat rows. Coffee mugs lined the edge like sentries. Sticky notes in bright colors clung to every corner. Lies. Debts. Betrayal. Violence. Evelyn arrived carrying 2 heavy binders and a case of highlighters. She laid everything down with a crisp efficiency that filled the room with quiet authority. Organization is power, she said. We won't just collect scraps. We will tell a story the court cannot ignore. His story unraveled by yours. She taught me how to sort the evidence. Red tabs marked his insults. Every email, every cruel joke at my expense. Blue tabs labeled the debts I paid while he called me useless. Yellow marked the humiliations, moments when he mocked me in front of others, when my parents even joined his laughter. Black for threats, the texts and emails where he tried to crush me. Page by page, the binder swelled. What had once been scattered fragments of shame now became a structured record of survival. But Evelyn wanted more than paper. Documents are strong, she explained, but witnesses breathe life into them. A judge doesn't just read evidence. He listens to voices. So we reached out. Claire contacted our neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, who remembered nights when Michael staggered home drunk, shouting in the driveway while I stood silently at the door. She agreed to testify. Evelyn tracked down one of his colleagues, who admitted Michael often bragged that he kept Vivian in line, and that I was too weak to leave. He provided a written statement. Even a friend who had drifted away during my marriage wrote to me after reading one of the news articles. I believed his version of you. I was wrong. If you need me, I'll speak. Each new voice slid into the binder, amplifying mine. For every lie he told, I now had truth loud enough to echo. Meanwhile, Michael's messages grew more frequent. Some short and sharp, pathetic. You'll regret this. Others longer, dripping with arrogance. The court will laugh at you. No judge will believe a wife who snoops. I'll take everything. Every time my stomach knotted, Evelyn steadied me. Save them all. He doesn't know it, but he's writing your case for you. Each threat is a confession. So I printed every one, slipped them under black tabs, and labeled the folder simply, threats. One night, after hours of sorting, I sat back and rubbed my eyes. The binders were heavy now, their spines stretched. My handwriting filled page after page. Claire poured me tea and set it gently beside me. Do you see it, Vivian? She asked. See what? That for years he called you nothing but here. She tapped the binders. This proves you were the one holding everything together. He only survived because of you. Her words cut through the fog of exhaustion, and for the first time, I felt tears not of weakness but of recognition. I wasn't nothing. I was the proof. When Evelyn returned days later, she spread the binders across the table, scanning each section with sharp eyes. This is strong. Strong enough to shake his lawyer before we even step into court. But Vivian, remember this. Once Michael sees what you've built, he will lash out harder. Men like him don't fold quietly. Her warning rattled me, but it proved true almost immediately, because that very evening a courier knocked on Claire's door. He handed me a sealed envelope, the crest of the courthouse pressed into the flap. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a petition, filed officially. The first court hearing was set for 2 weeks. The courthouse loomed above me like a fortress. Its marble steps shone slick from the morning rain, and every one of them felt heavier than the last. Claire walked on one side of me, her hand brushing my arm. Evelyn moved on the other, her briefcase swinging like a weapon. Together we climbed, but my heart pounded as if I were climbing alone. Inside the air was colder. Wooden benches creaked, shoes scuffed against marble. The gallery filled quickly. Neighbors, colleagues, even strangers drawn by the scent of scandal. I sat at the defense table, my binders stacked neatly before me, my hands folded tightly enough to leave marks. Across the aisle, Michael stood tall in a press suit, his hair slicked back, his smile sharpened into a blade. He caught my eye and tilted his head slightly, as though we were sharing some private joke. My stomach turned. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Harrison entered, gavel striking once. The sound sliced through the air like thunder. Michael's lawyer rose first. He was tall, polished, voice smooth with confidence. He painted me as unstable, vindictive, a woman too fragile to handle responsibility. She spies, she snoops, she twists every action into imagined betrayal, he said, pacing like an actor on a stage. She is reckless with finances, impulsive with judgment. She cannot be trusted. The words stung, but Evelyn leaned toward me, her voice calm. Let him talk. Every word is rope. He'll hang himself. Then the lawyer reached into his folder and drew out a single sheet. Exhibit A, Your Honor. Proof. A withdrawal of $50,000 from a joint account in MS. Lane's name. Days before she abandoned her husband. Gasps rippled through the gallery. My breath caught. I remembered that withdrawal. I had made it. But not for me. It had gone to cover one of Michael's gambling debts that would have cost us the house. Without context, though, it looked damning. On the paper, bold numbers glared back. Withdrawal date, my signature. Michael leaned back in his chair, smirk curling, his eyes glittering with triumph. The judge frowned, scanning the page. MS. Lane, do you have an explanation for this? My throat tightened. For a moment I saw the years flash. The insults, the jokes, the bruising words. Worthless. Nothing. Dead weight. If the court believed this lie, if they accepted his story, everything I had built would collapse. I forced myself to breathe. Evelyn's hand brushed mine, steady. Not yet, she whispered. Timing matters. Let them think they've won. The lawyer pressed forward, voice rising with confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, here is proof she is not only unstable but dishonest. She stole from her own household. She lined her pockets before walking out. A murmur spread through the gallery. My skin prickled. For the first time, doubt crept into the judge's eyes. Michael saw it too. He leaned forward, lips moving silently, but I knew what he was mouthing, checkmate. I wanted to scream, to slam down every receipt, every notarized letter, every page of proof. But Evelyn's warning held me. Wait. Let them hang themselves. The gavel struck once. The court will recess for review. Counsel will return with further evidence. The gallery erupted, whispers, gasps, shuffling feet. Michael rose with his lawyer, his smile widening as he buttoned his jacket. He walked past me slowly, leaning just close enough that only I could hear. You see, he whispered. You can't win. You'll never win. Then he walked out, the sound of his shoes echoing against the marble, leaving me trembling at the table. Claire gripped my hand. Vivian, breathe. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. But as I sat there, the exhibit still burning in my mind, fear and fury twisted together. Because I realized Evelyn was right. This wasn't just a case of betrayal. This was war. And in war, timing decides everything. When court resumed, the air tasted like metal. Reporters had drifted closer to the doors, the gallery packed so tightly that coats brushed wood and whispers braided into one low current. I could feel Michael's satisfaction pulsing from across the aisle, the way a storm hums before it breaks. He thought the single page would drown me. He thought I would flail. Evelyn stood. She did not hurry. She did not clear her throat. She simply rose like a tide and opened our heaviest binder. "Context, Your Honor," she said, and the room stilled. "Exhibit A was offered as a knife. We will show it as a mirror." She slid a notarized letter to the clerk, then a bank confirmation, then a payment receipt, each page marching in a clean row. This withdrawal did not enter Ms. Lane's pocket. It left at once to satisfy an overdue account in Mr. Lane's name. The destination is Riverfront Casino. The dates align. The signature on the receiving end is his. The judge leaned forward. He did not speak, but the room changed shape around his silence. Evelyn turned a red tab. Printed emails appeared beneath her hand like stones set into a path. Here are Mr. Lane's messages from those nights. Boasts to colleagues, disdain for his wife, references to keeping her in line. Here are dinner receipts on the same evenings when he claims late meetings. Here are transfers labeled as consulting that arrive in a private account he never disclosed. Michael's attorney tried to smile. It landed crooked. Counsel is weaving a story. A record, Evelyn corrected, calm as winter. Built line by line because Mr. Lane called my client worthless and believed she would never hold a ledger. I stood when she glanced at me. My legs shook once, then steadied. "For years I carried his debts," I said, my voice low but clear. "I learned to save receipts because I was tired of bleeding. I am not what he called me. I am what I can prove." A murmur rolled through the gallery. Even the court reporter looked up for a heartbeat. Michael surged to his feet. "She forged it, she's a liar." The judge's gaze snapped like a whip. "Sit down, Mr. Lane." His tone made the benches flinch. "You will speak through counsel." Michael sank, color draining, jaw working as if he were chewing glass. Evelyn did not spare him a glance. She set one more page on the stack. Text message from Ms. Sophia Hart to Ms. Lane. "He promised me the house. Do not embarrass yourself by fighting. You have already lost. We offer it not for adornment but for intent." From the third row a chair scraped. A woman rose, small and composed, a badge catching light at her collarbone. "Your Honor," she called, voice steady. "I am Miss Hart's building manager. The number in that printout belongs to the tenant listed as Sophia Hart." The judge lifted a palm without annoyance, only order. "You will be sworn if called. Clerk, note the proffer." Michael's attorney tried again, reaching for charm. "At most, Your Honor, we have a marital spat dressed in highlighter." Evelyn closed the binder with a soft final sound. "At minimum, we have a pattern. Concealment, contempt, and coercion. At most, we have fraud. Either way, Exhibit A, offered as proof of theft, is proof of something else entirely. Ms. Lane's endurance in the face of her husband's debts." Silence gathered. The judge removed his glasses, polished them with the edge of his robe, replaced them like a man placing a key into a lock that fits. "The court admits the defense documents in full. The weight to be assigned will follow review. The motion predicated on Exhibit A is denied." It was not a victory speech. It was better. It was a door closing on the hand that had tried to slam it in my face. A sound lifted behind me, half breath, half prayer. Claire's fingers found my wrist under the table and pressed, not clutching, only reminding me I had a pulse and that it now beat on my terms. Michael stared at me across the aisle. For the first time, I saw fear pull at his features, thin and mean. He leaned toward his lawyer, whispering in a rush. The lawyer nodded too quickly, then not at all. The judge shuffled the stack, then glanced at a separate folder on his bench. "One more item," he said. "An emergency motion to freeze Ms. Lane's personal accounts pending disposition." My blood went cold. Evelyn lifted her chin a fraction. "We object. The motion relies on Exhibit A as theft." The court has just denied that premise. Further, we have a ledger of every dollar Ms. Lane has spent since separation with receipts. She opened a slim file. Neat columns. Clean ink. Each entry a quiet anthem. Rent paid. Groceries. Counsel fees. Nothing hidden. Nothing lavish. Nothing wasteful. The judge considered, then set the emergency motion aside without drama. Denied. Counsel for petitioner is cautioned that further filings of this nature will draw sanctions. A sharper murmur swept the room. Michael's knuckles whitened on the edge of his table. He looked like a man who had pulled every hidden lever and felt each one snap in his hand. We adjourned. Boots on marble. Cameras bright beyond the doors. Air at last. In the hallway, microphones bloomed like flowers out of season. Evelyn raised a palm, the press fell back an inch. No statements, she said. The record speaks. Michael shouldered through bodies, face slick with fury. You think this ends here? He hissed, bending close so only I could hear. You humiliated me. I met his eyes. You humiliated yourself. I only turned on the light. He laughed, a brief ugly sound, and looked past me to someone I could not see. Do it, he muttered. A man stepped forward from the crowd, tidy suit, careful smile, a courier's pouch at his side. He handed an envelope to the bailiff, murmured a few quiet words, then pointed. Not at Michael, not at Evelyn, at me. The bailiff crossed the hall, expression sealed. He offered the envelope to Evelyn first. She gestured that he place it in my hand. The paper was thick, the seal unbroken, my name written in a firm black hand I did not recognize. I felt the weight of it settle into my palm like a small silent stone. From whom? Evelyn asked. The bailiff shook his head. No sender listed. Directed to Ms. Lane, to be delivered immediately. My throat tightened. I slipped a finger under the flap and began to lift. Michael smiled again, not triumphant, not kind, only certain. Inside the envelope lay a single photograph and a short, printed line. My breath stopped. The envelope was heavier than paper should be. My fingers trembled as I tore the seal. Inside, a single photograph slid into my lap. For a moment, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. Then my breath caught. It was me, sitting at Claire's kitchen table, head bent over the binder, highlighters scattered around me. The photo had been taken from outside the window, the angle sharp, the night dark behind the glass. Beneath the image was one line, typed in black letters, "We see everything." My stomach lurched. I gripped the edge of the bench until my nails dug grooves into the wood. Evelyn snatched the paper from my hands, scanning it quickly, jaw tightening. Claire's face went pale. This is intimidation, Evelyn hissed. Plain and simple. She folded the page carefully, slid it into her briefcase and locked the clasp. It will become part of the record. Michael was watching me from across the hall, eyes gleaming. He didn't need to speak. His smile said everything. I still control the shadows. The hallway buzzed with reporters. Microphones shoved forward, questions overlapping. Mrs. Lane, is it true your accounts were frozen? Do you have anything to say about the photograph? How do you respond to your husband's accusations? Cameras flashed. The air felt too thin. Claire pressed close to me, shielding my body as best she could, while Evelyn lifted a hand sharp as a blade. No comment. Step back. Her tone was a command, not a request. Slowly, reluctantly, the press gave space. We walked quickly through the doors into the gray daylight. I clutched my coat around me, though the air wasn't cold. It was the gaze of unseen eyes that made my skin crawl. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like a footstep. Every shadow at the window felt like a lens. I sat on Claire's sofa with the binder in my lap, the photo replaying in my mind. Who had taken it? Michael himself? Someone he paid? How long had they been watching? Claire found me at dawn, still awake, still clutching the binder like a shield. She sat beside me, wrapping a blanket over my shoulders. He's trying to rattle you, she said softly. Don't let him. Remember what Evelyn said, every threat is proof. I nodded, but inside fear clawed at me. Proof or not, the thought of unseen eyes following me gnawed through my resolve. By the next morning, news outlets carried the story. Somehow the photo had leaked. A blurry version appeared online with headlines twisting it cruelly. Wife obsessed with proving husband wrong, paranoia or justice? Binders and breakdowns. The Lane divorce saga deepens. My humiliation became public currency. Strangers commented freely, some defending me, others mocking. She looks crazy. Look at her hunched over papers like a madwoman. I wanted to disappear. But Evelyn's voice steadied me. Control the narrative. Don't react in anger. Let the record speak. So I breathed. I waited. At the next hearing, Michael arrived confident again, buoyed by the headlines. His lawyer smirked as if victory already belonged to them. But Evelyn was ready. She laid the photograph gently on the judge's bench. This was sent anonymously to my client, accompanied by a message. We see everything. Your Honor, this is intimidation bordering on stalking. We ask that it be entered into evidence. The judge's expression hardened. He turned the photo in his hands, studying the shadows, the reflection of light on the glass. Finally, he looked at Michael. Do you know anything about this? Michael spread his hands innocently, his voice smooth. Of course not. My wife has always been imaginative. Perhaps she staged it herself. The gallery gasped. My cheeks burned, but I stayed silent. Evelyn's hand pressed mine under the table. Enough, the judge said firmly. The court will investigate. But let it be clear. If this intimidation is connected to you, Mr. Lane, the consequences will be severe. For the first time, Michael's smirk flickered. When the session adjourned, the crowd spilled out once more. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, questions stabbed like needles. Evelyn guided me through, Claire shielding me again. But just as we reached the car, a voice cut through the noise. Vivian. I turned. A man stood on the courthouse steps, tall, coat buttoned tight, face unfamiliar. He held a folder in his hands. His eyes met mine, steady, unblinking. This is for you, he called. It's about him. You'll want to see it. The crowd hushed, cameras pivoted. Claire stiffened beside me. Evelyn stepped forward quickly, intercepting the folder before I could touch it. The man nodded once, almost solemnly, and disappeared into the throng before we could ask a single question. Back in the car, Evelyn opened the folder. Inside were documents, statements, photos, financial slips, and one line handwritten on top. He has more secrets than you know. I stared at the words, my pulse thundering. If the first envelope had been meant to intimidate me, this one was meant to arm me. But from whom? The morning after the stranger pressed the folder into Evelyn's hands, I woke to the sound of Claire's television buzzing from the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the air, but beneath it lay the metallic taste of dread. I knew even before I rose from the couch that something had shifted overnight. Claire muted the screen when I entered, but not before I caught the headline flashing across it. Lane divorce saga deepens. Alleged hidden accounts exposed. My knees nearly buckled. It's already out? Evelyn sat at the table, papers from the mysterious folder spread before her. Her expression was cool, but her eyes held a quiet fire. Yes, and it's stronger than we imagined. These aren't rumors, they're records. Transfers, offshore holdings, private ledgers. If these are authentic, Michael wasn't just reckless. He was hiding money. Claire's hands flew to her mouth. He told everyone you were the one draining accounts. I sat slowly, fingers trembling as I touched the edge of the folder. Who gave this to us? How could they know? Evelyn shook her head. We'll vet it. But whether ally or enemy, whoever left this wanted you armed. By noon, the media storm broke wide open. News anchors dissected the documents. Financial experts speculated on air. Some called it sensationalism. Others called it the beginning of Michael's unraveling. Headlines crawled across every screen. From husband to hustler? New evidence suggests Lane hid assets abroad. Divorce trial or financial scandal? My phone buzzed relentlessly with messages. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers. Some apologized for believing him. Others asked if it was true. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Michael, however, responded loudly. He staged a press conference outside his lawyer's office. Dressed in an immaculate suit, he stood before cameras, voice dripping with rehearsed sorrow. My wife is unwell, he declared. She fabricates. She conspires with anyone who will listen. These so-called documents are forgeries meant to destroy my reputation. I have dedicated my life to providing for her, and this is how I am repaid." Gasps, murmurs, even a few sympathetic nods rippled through the reporters. But then someone shouted, "Mr. Lane, what about the offshore transfers? The signatures match yours." Michael faltered just for a breath, then plastered the smile back on. "Baseless. Lies. We will prove it in court." Evelyn watched the footage later with a grim smile. "He overplayed. The more he insists, the harder the fall when we confirm the truth." But it wasn't only about documents anymore. That night, a second envelope arrived at Claire's door. No courier this time, just slipped under the mat. Inside was a photo of Michael dining with Sophia at a luxury restaurant, time-stamped the same night he claimed to be home ill. Beneath it, another line: "Check the valet records." I pressed the photo against the table, hands shaking. Proof after proof piling like stones. Whoever was feeding me this information knew details only an insider would. "Someone close to him is turning," Claire whispered. "Maybe a friend. Maybe a colleague. He's not as untouchable as he thinks." Evelyn tapped the photo into the binder. "It doesn't matter who it is. What matters is this: his fortress has cracks. And the wider they grow, the more the court will listen to your voice." The following day in court, Michael arrived with fury burning under his polished mask. His lawyer thundered about fabricated evidence, but Evelyn rose with the quiet power of inevitability. "Your Honor," she said, placing the restaurant photo before the bench, "our client is accused of paranoia. Here is time-stamped proof that Mr. Lane lied about his whereabouts. Here are valet records confirming his car was parked outside the same establishment. And here," she laid down Sophia's signed credit receipt, "is the charge bearing her name covered by his account." The gallery stirred like a hive. Michael's composure cracked. His jaw clenched, his hands white on the table. The judge tapped his gavel once, restoring silence. "The court will review. But the weight against you, Mr. Lane, is mounting. I advise restraint." Michael's glare cut across the room and landed on me. I held his stare for the first time in years. And for the first time I saw not certainty, not control, but panic. That night Evelyn warned me. "We are winning, Vivian. But men like him don't lose gracefully. Be ready. The more truth corners him, the more dangerous his desperation becomes." Her words echoed in my chest as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Outside, rain tapped against the window like fingers. Somewhere in the distance, a car idled too long before driving away. I told myself it was nothing. But deep down I knew Michael was planning something. Something that could turn victory into peril if I wasn't ready. The final hearing arrived like the closing of a storm. For weeks, the courtroom had been a battlefield. Binders against smirks, receipts against denials, witnesses against whispers. Now the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Judge Harrison entered, gavel striking once. "This court will render its decision today." Michael sat across the aisle, suit immaculate, face pale beneath its polish. Sophia was nowhere to be seen. His lawyer shuffled papers with the air of a man already preparing for defeat. Evelyn placed our binders neatly before her. She did not speak. She did not need to. The record already had. The judge's voice carried steady and unbroken. "The evidence demonstrates a consistent pattern of deceit, financial mismanagement, and emotional abuse on the part of Mr. Michael Lane. The court finds no credibility in his claims against Mrs. Vivian Lane." My heart thudded, slow and heavy, each word a nail in the coffin of his lies. "Therefore," the judge continued, "this court grants dissolution of marriage in favor of Mrs. Lane. All marital assets identified as concealed are ordered to be restored. Mrs. Lane is awarded exclusive ownership of the family home. Furthermore, due to the severity of intimidation and misconduct, Mr. Lane is sanctioned. His access to marital funds is revoked. His petition is denied in full." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Michael's shoulders jerked as if struck. He half rose, but the judge's gaze pinned him back into his chair. Evelyn whispered, "It's over." But in my chest it wasn't over. "Not yet." The judge tapped his gavel. "Mrs. Lane, do you have anything you wish to say?" I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice was steady. "For years he called me worthless. He told me I would never be anything without him. But Your Honor, these binders prove the opposite. I was the one who carried him. I was the one who paid, who endured, who survived. Today I am not worthless. I am free. The silence that followed cracked into applause, murmurs, even a few tears in the gallery. The judge allowed it for a moment before restoring order. Michael's face collapsed, his smirk gone, his jaw slack. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Not a monster. Not even a man in control. Just broken pride in an empty suit. Outside, cameras flared, voices rose, microphones pressed forward. Reporters shouted questions. Vivian, how do you feel? What does freedom mean to you now? I held my head high. I feel alive, I said. And I feel grateful that truth still matters. To anyone who has been silenced, remember this. You are stronger than the voices that call you nothing. You are something. Claire's hand found mine. Evelyn smiled quietly beside me. The rain that had haunted so many nights was gone. The sky cracked open with light. Weeks later, I walked through the front door of my home, not his. The rooms felt lighter, the walls no longer listening to his footsteps. I set the binders on a shelf, not as a burden but as a testament. A record not of pain but of proof. Michael vanished from the city's conversations. His name became a cautionary whisper. His reputation crumbled under the weight of his own lies. As for Sophia, she disappeared as quickly as she had appeared. Her promises of inheritance dissolving into nothing. But me? I rebuilt. Slowly, steadily. And with every sunrise, I grew surer of one thing. Revenge does not always roar. Sometimes it is the steady voice of truth, read aloud for all to hear. I was once the woman left broken on the side of the road. Now I am the woman who walked out of a courtroom with her head high, her dignity intact, and her freedom restored. My name is Vivian Lane. And this is my story. If my story spoke to you, if you've ever felt betrayed, silenced, or told you were nothing, remember this. Your voice is stronger than their lies. Share this video with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories of justice, resilience, and the sweetest revenge.